What's up, Bounders? I'm DBFig, and this is Digital Boundaries News. This video is sponsored by nobody. I'm poor, just being honest. So if you want to see more of these videos in your inbox, make sure you like the video, share it with others, and subscribe, and I will do my best to put out a video when I'm not half asleep or bored or doing something else. Microsoft had an interview today with CNET. CNET had a very short interview. I'll put a link in the description and in the comment section if you want to check it out. It's a very interesting interview. But what's important about this interview on CNET was not only did they interview Phil Spencer, and they were talking about the purchase of Bethesda for $7.5 billion. In this interview, they pretty much reiterated the same thing over and over and over again, that they are trying to build up their own studios, but if they find another studio that they share a lot of commonality with, if they have kind of like the same vision moving forward, they want to just acquire the studio. They're being very blatant. People have always joked for years that Microsoft could just, Microsoft has like FU money. They're just gonna buy something and they'll just buy their way into the market. Well, I guess, Satya Nadella and Phil Spencer are like, oh yeah, we do have FU money. Let's just start buying studios because we're Microsoft and we can outspend pretty much anybody next to like Google or Facebook, especially Sony. Here's the thing, Sony has done an amazing job. I like Sony stuff, even though I'm a PC gamer. I like Sony stuff, I like Microsoft stuff. I'm not a console war guy whatsoever. I actually hate that stuff. That's kind of stupid to me. But here's the thing, Sony's done a great job and they've really built their company based off exclusives, similar to Nintendo. Nintendo has the best exclusives in the world. People buy a Nintendo console just for Nintendo games. Not even Sony with their exclusives, because they have third parties backing it up as well. Microsoft, even though they do have a couple exclusives here and there, one of the biggest hits they have always taken during the last gen or current gen is that they don't have a lot of exclusives. Halo was constantly delayed or a bit disappointing. Gears of War is pretty good, but never really the big hit compared to something like Last of Us or Uncharted or God of War. They don't have those names. Halo's probably one of the closest out there. Forza, great series, but it's a racing game. It's a beloved racing game. But even Gran Turismo, which is also beloved, is not going to be like heralded as like a system seller unless you're really, really into cars. Now they have Bethesda and ZeniMax underneath their umbrella. So what is next? Well, to be very honest, in this interview, they were very blatant and just said, hey, we're looking at other companies. We want to acquire other companies. And the main reason is Game Pass. People wanted always a Netflix for video games for a very long time. And well, Game Pass is probably the closest that we have to a Netflix for video games, which is honestly kind of cool. I like Game Pass. I think Game Pass is by far the best deal in video games. Of course, if you're the type of person that you're really big on ownership, like I have to have a physical copy or I want to make sure that I don't lose my games and not pay a monthly fee, I completely get you guys, 100%. I understand those feelings. But for the average person who just wants to turn on their console or they want to have a couple games on their PC that they wouldn't buy normally, but if they're paying like $14.99 a month and you have access to hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of games, that's a very enticing deal. But here's the big thing here. They've been making a lot of friends in the industry. They've been reaching out for many years trying to gain trust, and to be very honest, like I said before, Microsoft has FU money, and if all else fails, they can just throw it out there. So there's a couple companies that I feel is in their sights right now. EA, that's going to be a huge one if they acquire EA. Microsoft can acquire EA, they have the money to do so. I think at this period in time, EA is in a position that they don't really want to be acquired, but you have to understand, they're willing to join with Microsoft with Game Pass. They're basically saying that our EA Play, our subscription service, you don't have to pay extra if you have Microsoft Game Pass. So there's already a major deal there and they're handshaking very hard. That means Microsoft is paying pretty much everyone's EA Play subscription in lieu of Xbox Game Pass. That's a massive deal. So what happens if they get a little bit closer and a little bit closer? Because Activision Blizzard is massive. EA is massive. Imagine if Microsoft just straight up buys EA. I mean, a lot of people complain about all the stuff that EA does, and trust me, I understand. But it will be a massive earthquake shattering rock to the industry if they actually acquired EA, because again, Microsoft could afford it. Another company, and this one I feel is probably the most viable of my theories I have right now, and that's Sega. For a couple reasons. Sega is very valuable because they own a lot of different properties. Games like Tomb Raider, of course, their nostalgia section with all the Sonic games and the entire library underneath the Sega umbrella, on top of all the stuff from Atlas as well. So it's a big get if they get Sega. Sega is one of the largest publishers in Japan, and how long has Microsoft wanted to get in with the Japanese market? They could get the retro market by picking up all the classics from Sega. They could get into the Japanese market because of all the stuff that Sega does within the Japanese market, because they're a Japanese-born company. And lastly, they could get all the other side stuff like Total War and Tomb Raider and all the other stuff that Sega publishes. That would be huge, and I guarantee that Microsoft can afford to acquire Sega. I guarantee they have the money to do that. I mean, I would say that Bethesda is probably about the same worth-wise, money-wise, as Sega, maybe even a little bit lower than Bethesda. And you get two major companies. You get Sega, you get Atlas. I mean, it's written on the wall. It's very straightforward to do something like that. Microsoft is not looking at the now, they're looking at 4, 5, 6, 7 years from now. Because if they can make Game Pass the next MS Office 365, that means regardless of generation, they could keep on charging people $14.99 or $19.99 or $24.99, however jumps they make over time, and constantly get a flow of money and change the entire industry to a service-based industry. So they don't care how many systems they sell, because if you could get your games on the Xbox whatever and then get them on PC or play them through xCloud, as long as you're paying that subscription service, as long as you're in Microsoft's ecosystem, that's game over. Microsoft knows that is the far game. That is the money-making game that made Microsoft the gigantic company that it is today. So how does Sony counter that? I honestly don't know. I mean, I know people are major Sony fans out there, and I personally get a little bit nervous thinking that Microsoft can pull this stuff. I mean, business side, I completely get it. I 100% get it. Business side, it is smart business. It is very straightforward, smart business. But as a gamer who likes competition, who likes all this stuff, it gets me a little bit nervous that Microsoft can do something like this. So Sony needs to start putting up all the stops. Sony doesn't have the FU money that Microsoft does. They straight out don't. I mean, they're not poor, but they're not Microsoft money level of rich. They just don't have that spending money. It was only like 6-7 years ago that analysts were saying that Sony was on the verge of bankruptcy, and the PlayStation is the thing that saved their ass. The PlayStation is the most money-making part of Sony. The entire Sony. PlayStation is the money-making part. So if that goes down, Sony is in big trouble. So what do they have to do? Do they have to start working their own Game Pass? Are we going to all of a sudden start seeing companies out there start acquiring all these major publishers and developers? But what do you guys think of all this? I've yabbered enough about this. I'm just kind of free flowing. There's no script. I'm just kind of saying my thoughts out to the internet, and you guys get to decide. But as always, guys, I truly appreciate your support. Thank you so much for checking out Digital Boundaries News. And as always, thank you for being awesome. Hey, thanks for watching the video. By the way, I stream on a regular basis over at twitch.tv/DBFig. Give me a follow over there. And while you're here, please make sure you subscribe and like this video. It really helps out the channel. Thank you for being awesome.